Scout.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Good to see you.
I am wonderful. For our audience, Scout Bassett is the American record holder at 100 and 200 meters on the track, world record holder for 400 meters on the track, and going back to where she grew up. She lost her leg in a chemical fire before she was a year old and lived in this horrific orphanage for the first 7 years, and fortunately was adopted by a family from Michigan. And then you come to this strange country. What were your thoughts when you first came over here?
Well, I had never seen Caucasian people until I came here and was adopted.
We're pretty strange looking, huh?
So that was a bit terrifying, yes. But it was such a traumatic experience for me just to, live in one place, one room, almost 8 years of your life. And then the next moment you're, on a train, a plane, a car, all for the first time in a world that you've never even heard about.
Yeah, and within a year and a half or so, you didn't speak English at all. You're winning spelling bees in English. You end up with a full-on scholarship, academic scholarship to UCLA. When did you find CAF, and what did CAF bring to the table for you?
I got introduced to the Challenge Athletes Foundation when I was 14 years old, and I was at this track and field meet in Florida, and CAF was there supporting several other athletes, including Rudy.
Yeah.
And they told me about what they do and being able to provide adaptive sports equipment and funding for athletes with disabilities, and I was just so shocked. I had never heard of such a thing.
Yeah.
And but it completely transformed my life. I got a running leg for the first time then and ran for the first time, and it just set me on a whole new path that I could have never dreamt about.
What always fascinates me is you go back to China for the first time since you were adopted as a triathlete, right? Doing para-triathlon back then. What was that experience like going back to China?
Well, it was emotional, obviously, just to be back stepping foot on my homeland for the first time. At that point, it had been almost 16 years since I had left. And but, I was so grateful and appreciative to have the opportunity to compete in front of my home country and obviously to represent the U.S. But I felt a lot of warmth and love from the crowd and the fans, people who had obviously known my story and followed it there. So nothing but positive vibes when I was there.
So when you moved from triathlon into track and field.
Yep.
And I remember watching you out at track meets, and some of your equipment, you had like a racquetball taped to the back of your leg to keep your knee from flying up, and the equipment has changed just a little bit since you got into track and field.
Oh my goodness, even in the last 5 years, I would say. I've been doing this for almost 8 years, but especially in the last 5 years, the technology has really improved, has changed, and that's what's so incredible about companies like OSER that are involved. They see the need out there for these athletes to want to compete at the highest level with the very best in the world, and they're always creating new technology, new running blades, knees, to be able to get, athletes to be able to compete at that level.
Right.
And so it's great to see the evolution of, the original cheetah running blade to, several variations that we have now of it.
So your goal, you just missed on making the 2012 team, and you got to go to Rio in 2016 for your first Paralympic experience. How special was that?
It was such a dream come true. I was so disappointed 4 years ago when I didn't make that team.
Yeah.
And not only did I not make that team, but I finished dead last at U.S. trials.
Right.
And so obviously that was such a disappointing, heartbreaking experience. And then to be able to, 4 years later, make that team was obviously really special. But it's a dream come true. There's nothing like competing at the Paralympics. Nothing comes even close to that Super Bowl, so to speak.
So one of the things that you do so well is you're a phenomenal mentor. I saw you at San Diego Triathlon Challenge with a little boy who I think grew up in the same orphanage that you did.
Yes.
And then you just went back to China, and I think Nike was filming you reliving those early days of your life. How special was that, and how cathartic was that?
Well, it was so interesting because 4 days after Rio, I left on a plane to go to back to China. So this is only my second trip back since I've been adopted.
Yeah.
But I had not been back to the orphanage that I grew up in. And Nike gave me an opportunity to do some active schools work and program with the public schools and kids, and I said I'd love to, but I have one request, and that's that, can we make it possible to go back to the orphanage, because it's not so easy. You can't just show up and say you want to go tour.
Right, yeah.
And so they made it possible, and I think that was probably the most powerful and moving experience that I've had of my life thus far, of just being able to go back to the place that I had some really trying years. And, it's never easy to go face the people or places that, broke us.
Right.
And for me, there were a lot of tears, but all good things, to see the progress that's been made. 90%, over 90% of the kids in the orphanage have a mental or physical disability, which is why they are there. But it was so incredible to work with the kids and just to spend time with them and to share a lot of love and hope with these kids. And I think that was the hardest part, is in a country, people don't realize this about China, but it is still a country that is very socially behind in terms of disability.
Yes.
It is not known, it's not seen, they don't promote it. You would never see a disabled athlete on an ad or anything there. And they're still very shameful to have a disability in China. And so I think it was hard for me to see that these kids, it's hard to imagine that they're going to have a future in a place that doesn't really see them as belonging in society.
Or seeing them as important, or
Yes.
having value.
Exactly.
That has changed a lot here, right?
Yes.
Because you didn't know that many other people. In the town you grew up in, you weren't just the only amputee. I think you're the only Asian in the city you grew up in. So how has that changed, and how has CAF been a part of that change?
Oh gosh, I think CAF has been a huge a motivator and a huge agent of change in the way that people look at disability, athletes with disability. I mean, I even think in the last 10 years how far we've come, in the sense that, all the time I hear from people that write or message me of how encouraging and motivating and inspiring. And it used to be of a very charitable way or done in a very sympathizing way.
Right.
Like, I feel bad for the life that you've had to live, or that you're disabled. And now it's not that way at all. It's more of like, wow, it's so powerful. You're strong. You're beautiful. You're all these things that, are positive instead of a negative. And it's great to see that our athletes are celebrated in this country. And I think, there's a lot of progress still to be made. But when you go and to see another country where they're not even known, I mean, they're not even walking the streets, and to see the just the attitude here. And CAF has been such a huge part of lifting these athletes up as athletes, as incredible human beings and people, and not as, an amputee or a wheelchair athlete, or, and that's just a afterthought.
The relationships that you have with some of these kids who you see each year at SDTC, and some of them you see here at Heart and Hope, how special is that for you?
Oh my gosh, my work with the kids is really the most important thing I think that I can do and be involved with in CAF, because, growing up, I didn't really have a lot of people to look up to. You didn't see individuals with disabilities on TV or magazines, really. It was very rare. And
yes, got a donation. We love it.
And so that was just something that wasn't seen, really. And now, to be involved in these kids' lives, to invest in them, and to let them know that they have a future, they have worth and value, regardless of what they look like or where they come from, is so important. And it's one of the best things that we do at CAF, is offering an opportunity for kids to be involved in sport, to experience wholeness, confidence, self-esteem, all really important things beyond just the physical. What you represent to people, because at this point you've Nike sponsorship, Citibank sponsorship, you've got support in not just support. People are supporting you because that it used to be that being different was not good. Being different is good, right? You stand out in the crowd. People notice you. Has that been a surprise for you? I think so, and I also think I've been really surprised by just the measure of my story. I didn't think that people would really find something, to hold on to with my story, just because it's so unusual and it's so
Right.
different. But what I've learned is that there are aspects of it and things that I've gained from it that are applicable to anybody.
Yes.
Of having to persevere, to overcome, to push through. And so I think I've been really surprised by just how much people have gravitated to that. And I think to the things that I'm passionate about and the work that I'm involved with CAF. And all of this has been really shocking. You go from 4 years ago of nobody even paying attention to you, not even really knowing who you are, to, being on the international stage and
being in national commercials and things like that.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor, and it's very, very humbling for sure.
So obviously 2020 is a big goal because you had unfinished business when you didn't make the team in 2012. This year you didn't medal, and I know you want to come back and get that. What do you do between now and then? What are some of your goals in between?
Well, we've got a World Championships next year in London, which is actually going to be the first World Championships in athletics that they're going to have both able-body and Paralympics at the same event. Yeah,
I love
which
that.
is pretty crazy. So it'll be at the London Stadium, Olympic Stadium. But between now and then, obviously, it's athletically, I want to continue to get better.
Right.
I want to fine-tune my craft and perfect it more. But
Sure.
then really to continue to be involved with CAF and really helping to push our movement forward, our cause.
Yes.
And so in the next 4 years, I'm really looking forward to that. And then also just working with kids. That's a huge passion of mine. I am hoping to be able to go back to China and do some more things with the orphanages and work there. So some big goals and dreams, on and off the track. But I think I'm going to be pretty busy.
You're going to be really busy. Scott, thanks for everything you do for CAF. I know all those kids, they light up every time you walk in the room.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute honor.